Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning, depending on where you are in the country. This is Scott Fiaschetti, and I'm here with Brian Shopper from Geopath, and also AJ Chopley from Geopath. I just want to thank everyone for joining today. Um, uh, Okay, just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. And do apologize. Brian, AJ, and myself were all in uh, different locations today, as I'm sure many of you are like us, working from home. So I do want to apologize up front for any technical difficulties, or if kind of the session today maybe is a little clunky in some spots where we're handing control of the screen back and forth. But again, I do want to say thank you to so many of you for joining today. There's an impressive turnout for this session, and want to again just say thank you and talk about what we're going to do today, and just talk about these sessions in general. So it does seem like there's a lot of new people to these sessions. So just if you've never joined these sessions before and this is your first time, just want to give you a bit of background on what we're going to do and what to expect from today, as well as from tomorrow. So hopefully all of you will join again tomorrow. So typically we do these sessions every month. We do a foundational session and an advanced session. And with the foundational session, we tend to focus on the Insight Suite specifically, because we know the vast majority of our members are using that and logging in and needing that to pull data from. So we want to make sure everybody's aware of how to use that and just learn about what's changed. So there's new updates continually coming out. So we want to make sure everybody understands how to use those new updates and those improvements. But also want to have everybody just get a basic understanding of basic workflows and how to access basic metrics. So that's typically a foundational session. And then the advanced sessions, what we have been doing over the course of the last year or so, is we've been working with our members to create some different use cases. And we invite them on and we talk about how they're using the data and how they're using the new Geopath Insights data to help solve their clients' needs. But last month, and again this month, we're changing the advanced session, and we want to make sure everybody's prepared and ready and knows how to migrate their workflow from the Geopath legacy tools. So as you see here, OPlan and ADS, and show how you can use the Insight Suite to pull the same data and get the same data. So tomorrow we'll really dig deep into most likely and you'll see this in a little bit when Brian just does a walkthrough of the Insight Suite, but we're focused a lot on the workspace module. And we have some new updates and things to talk about with that we'll let you know about near the end of this session. Before I do jump into it, I do also want to say, and again, I always forget this, please ask any questions throughout the session. We're happy to answer them. We know, again, there's a lot of people on the session today, so we want to make sure we're trying to answer your questions. And we'll try to do as much in real time as we can. So there may be times where if we miss a question, we might have to go back or things like that. So I do want to, again, just encourage everybody to ask as many questions as they need to get started. So Brian, AJ, just want to check in with you. Are you guys all set, ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm good.
Cool. So just to jump into it, and what we typically do, again, if it's first time for these sessions, I'll give a quick overview of some of the updates that you'll see, and then I'll hand it off to Brian, and he'll walk through the actual Insight Suite, show the workflows, and actually touch on some of the new updates that I will have covered in here. So, as of in the Insight Suite today, some of the new updates that have come in, and you may have seen this already if you've been in there, exploring and using it already. But one of the bigger changes over the last month or so has been the ability to look at all inventory and see it filtered on the right side. Previously, there was always a throttle, so to speak, where you had to get below 50,000 for the right to start to populate in terms of seeing all of the inventory listed below and filtered below. So now you can, that is removed, so you can see for all of our inventory, however you want to start filtering it by comp index, by impression, by reach, etc. You can start to even see that for every piece of inventory, so you don't have to get below that 50,000 mark. So if somebody has a lot of inventory, they can now look at all their inventory at once and see kind of which is the best for which is the best for a certain type of metric. Also, the another thing, which is a big, I know a lot of you were asking for this, and we're really excited for this to come out. So this is a screenshot of the inventory plan in the workspace module. We probably, as I'm looking at it now, we probably cut the screenshot a little too tight, but one thing you can do right now, which is again something we've been asked for a couple of weeks now, is being able to add specific schedules for individual units, as well as for an entire plan. So you're no longer tied into the preset one for 1, 2, 4, 8, and 12 that we have there. They are there. You can use that if that's, those are some of the more commonly used ones, which is why they're there. But if you need to get more specific and want to put specific dates down, you can do that now, and you can do that even for individual units. So some may, if you have a rotary schedule, you may want to stop some at a certain date and start some at another date, which you can now do in your plans. And here's another screenshot of what that would actually look like in the plan. You can see here in the right side where the square is, you can start to see how we've put some different start and end dates for different units here. And then another feature that's gonna, again, in the kind of more ease of use and how to use the Insight Suite, you have the ability now to actually download a CSV template if you want to use our template, but you also have the ability to set up your own, but you can import the CSV more easily, so a whole set of inventory rather than just copying or pasting in the Geopath IDs. You can use that to import in more information. This isn't saying that you're importing new inventory into the system. This is inventory that already exists in the Insight Suite, but you're also just able to create a plan and import that a lot more easily. And so those are some of the bigger updates over the course of this month. So I'm going to quickly hand it off. I do want to check in with Brian and AJ to see if there are any questions while I was talking that came up. But if not, I'll hand it off to Brian and he'll do the walkthrough. And again, I'll probably be popping in and out, adding some, if people have questions, I'll kind of pose those and we can talk about them in real time.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I didn't see any questions yet.
Okay, great. But again, feel free everyone to ask questions as we go along.
Okay. So as Scott said, yeah, apologies if there's any sort of technical clunkiness here. We're doing this definitely a bit differently than we normally do. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen now. So as Scott said a little bit earlier, there are a handful of new people signed up for today that names I haven't seen before, or just people who may not have gotten a chance to join in the past. So a lot of what today's session and today's example will be around is just kind of more basic workflows and getting a good, well-rounded look at the Insight Suite. And then tomorrow's session is going to be, like Scott said, a lot more of an in-depth workflow and learning how to translate old workflows from the legacy systems to the new Insight Suite. And so if there's anything here today, specifically with the workspace module, that it seems like I don't touch on too much, that's just because a majority of tomorrow is going to be spent around the workspace module. So again, for anyone who hasn't been in here before, when you first log into the Geopath Insights Suite, this is the first main page that you see, this spotlight page. And basically what it does is it just kind of tells you a little bit about what each of the different modules within the Insights Suite do. So if we go to the workspace module, which we will go through today, and again, tomorrow will be focused around quite a bit. But this is a big planning hub. This is where all of the legacy OPlan and ADS functionality now lives. So if there's things that used to do in the legacy tools, chances are most of that would be within here. Some of it is within the Explore module as well, which is where we'll be spending a good amount of time today as well. I think this is probably where a majority of our time will be spent today. And the Explore module is just a graphic mapped out approach for exploring inventory. Basically, all of the audited inventory that we have in the system appears on the map here in the Explore module, and you can filter and get really specific with your markets and audiences and things like that. And I'll go through all that as well. And then finally, the Places module is a points of interest module. So if you want to map out retail locations or things like that and visualize them with your inventory, this is a great place to do that. I'll touch upon this a little bit in a few minutes. It's not part of my larger example for the day, so I'll take a bit of an aside to talk about it, but we'll come back to that. So to start, I'm going to go to the Explore module. Like I said, this is where I think a majority of our time will be spent today. And again, if there's anything as I'm going through, if you have questions about it, the questions widget or the chat widget, whatever it is, just send in a question, and we can always go back over things, explain them more, anything like that. Excuse me. So this is the Explore module of the Geopath Insights suite. There's a few things I want to talk about before we start to actually go through and do an example. I'll sort of touch upon everything first, and then we'll come back to it and do an example. But actually, it just popped in. As Scott had mentioned, one of the new features that got added was all of the spots or all of the faces in the system now appear here on the right-hand side in this spot summary list. And I believe it was about 50,000 cap before, but now you can see about 730,000. They are all here. So if you wanted to rank something nationally, you could do that. We'll use this a lot more in a little bit, but there's always something at the start that I always like to talk about is these metrics up here in this spot summary list. And these are always reflective of whatever you currently have in your filter, whatever audience you currently have, whatever your market is. These always change depending on what's currently being looked at. So for example, here you can see we're looking at the full United States, and we're looking at our total audiences of persons 0+. And that's against all of the inventory here. So these are the full metrics for the entire US in a given week. And it's just, I always point this out just because as we go through and filter things, I always think it's interesting to keep an eye on this as we, filter further down and it changes, just to see how the metrics themselves change. And you can kind of get a larger sense of markets and things like that by looking at these. So the Explore module is largely controlled by these 4 tabs at the top. It's mostly these first 2 tabs, and then these tabs are a lot more of the actual interface and the graphic layout of everything. But so let's start with the Define Target tab. So within this tab, we have three different options of things that we can do. Here we can select our audience. In the Insights suite, we have over 8,000 audiences. These are from our partners at Claritas, and they are broken down into 3 different categories. Population is largely in line with our legacy systems and is somewhat in the realm of census-based demographics. So we have things like, your standard demographics here, some behaviors like language spoken in the home, commute, employment. And then down here in household profile, we have things like income, children in the home, amount of money spent on rent or mortgage. So some things like that are a bit more demographic leaning. Then in the consumer profiles category, we have actually a majority of those 8,000 audiences that are in here. And those are broken out into a lot of different categories as well. So you can see just as I scroll through, environmental, financial, health, magazine, newspapers, psychographics, restaurants. So this is where a lot of your, behavioral or spending things would be found. And a good place to start with this is either by category or by search, because like I said, there are a lot of things in here. So a good place to start is up here. And then finally, the third category is Prism Premier, which as with everything else, is through our partners at Claritas, but Prism Premier is actually Claritas's segmentation product. So how it works is they break down every household in the US, they split them apart into one of 68 different audience segments. We have all those here. And basically how they group them is, people who are socioeconomically similar and also culturally similar. And this is just a good way if you have sort of an idea of the kind of people that you'd like to target with your campaign or a good starting place. This is where you could start. And I always take a minute to mention this here. If you ever have a question about what any of these mean, because all these Prism Premier segments have kind of interesting names that don't really mean a lot if you don't know what they are. If you come down to the help button in the left hand or lower right hand corner, and then you search, you can search for any of these. So say I wanted to search for the first one, upper crust. Within this, we have all these articles that basically just give you a little bit of an overview. Oh, apologies, my home monitor is all weird. So if anything ends up squished or strangely pushed together while I'm doing this, I apologize. But so for all of these 68 different segments, we have a little article that will tell you a bit more about them. And then this link button here will actually, or this external arrow button, will link you to our support site for the Insight Suite, which has tons of articles and other helpful things like that. So if you ever have a question about something in here, that's a good place to start as well. So that's the audience selection. We'll come back to that when I do my actual example, but I just want to talk through these. Assign market. So you can, as of fairly recently, either this update or the one before, you can now group multiple audience or multiple markets together to make custom markets. So say I wanted to select, New York and LA, I could do that. Or if I wanted to look in the CBSA category, I could select any of these. Or counties, I could select all the counties in a given state and make a statewide market if I really wanted to. The only limitation here is that you can't combine between categories or between market denominations. So just something to keep in mind there. And again, we'll come back and I'll do all this with my example.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Hey, just before you get too far away, we had a couple of questions around the audience and selecting audiences.
Yep.
There was a question about what combinations can you cross tabs in terms of age, sex, and income.
Oh, this, yeah, I should have mentioned that actually. And you know what? My example today actually does dive into that a little bit. But to answer the question, it's largely in line with whatever we had in our legacy systems. So a lot of the things that you can, I'll show a quick example. If I were to pick 18 plus, for example, if you pick one of the demographics, you can see your selected one ends up down in this box here. And then all of the other ones that you can possibly combine with it right now show up here. So employment status, some household profiles like income, other demographics we can add here. So it is somewhat limited right now, but this is a feature that is expanding as we prepare more and more and do more calculations on these audience combinations. More of these will get added eventually. But if you're in the population category and you click on one and it puts it in this box here, you can always see whatever else you can add to it up here.
Yep, but the initial intent too was to have at least right now as much parity. So with combining audiences as there was in the ADS and O plan. So as Brian said, you can at least combine any audiences that were combined in the legacy tools in the Insight Suite. There was also one more question related to audience, and again, apologies if you, I'm not sure if you covered this already enough, but it said, can you explain the difference between consumer profiles and the Prism Premier segments? So
yeah, sure. Yeah, so the consumer profiles are a group of a bunch of different categories that include, spending, purchase behaviors, intent to buy certain things. These are all really, these are all ones that are either specific to brand or specific to behavior. And then the Prism Premier segments themselves are really just about this sort of demographic and sort of economic qualities of the household. So, the I forget what it said, whatever for upper crust, I forget what the actual definition was, but if you select upper crust, it will give you data for all of the households that Claritas has grouped into that segment.
and just,
So yeah, go ahead.
and just to help add to that. So, and again, if I'm repeating, apologies, but so this is a proprietary product because we are leveraging our relationship with Claritas, and we're using their data to inform, our audiences. So this product, every household in the U.S. is assigned to one Prism Premier segment, and they are using the variety of data that's in the consumer profiles as well as population data to kind of inform that and put everybody into one of these Prism Premier segments on their own as well. So that's just a little bit of hopefully additional information on the Prism Premier segments.
All right. Yes.
Well, so
So,
sorry, one
oh,
more, got a
yeah, go
lot
ahead.
more questions coming in on the consumer behavior. So just a clarification about combining, the question is, about combining consumer behaviors cannot happen yet. So I think that was in reference to the first question. So yes, yeah, that is correct. So for now, I know there's the desire ultimately to be able to say males 18 to 34 that play video games or do X, Y, or Z. That is, again, something we're working on down the line. For now, it's just the set of uh, combinations you can in the population area that you can combine.
Okay. Any other ones?
Um,
And we can always come back to these in a
yeah,
second.
basically the question is why can we only um, combine the ones that we can combine now, the age, income, sex, race, et cetera, variables. And basically, again, I don't, it is something we're working on to eventually be able to do that in the population area. So I don't know the specific reason, but we will be getting there someday soon. Um, the difficulty with the population versus the consumer profiles, if you've been on one of these calls before, is essentially just we need to make sure we're not we can dedupe the data, and again, because some of these come from different surveys, we were having to go through and do that so to ensure we're not double counting, etc. So, and that was the last question.
Okay. Yeah, and if there are any other questions, we can just kind of stop along the way and come back to that. Um, okay, so I should mark it really quick. So the third thing in the define target tab that you can use is this schedule delivery. So you can change the number of weeks that these metrics are reflecting. And as Scott mentioned, we can now get more specific with that. That's one of the bigger features of the recent release, and we'll do that in the workspace module. But here you can change the number of weeks to any of these denominations here, and you'll see that the metrics will reflect whatever you have here. So that's the define target tab. The filter inventory tab is really the other main tab that does a lot of the function of this module. So here's where you can actually start to filter out from all of the inventory that we're seeing here. So all of these teal dots across the US, these are all different pieces of inventory. You can see they kind of cluster near cities and certain other areas like that. And over here, we can see we've got 735,000. But that's a lot of inventory. There's a lot of different ways that we could get down to the inventory that we're looking for, and that's where you can actually use these inventory filters. So the media and placement is broken out into a lot of different categories here. I'll lightly touch upon a couple of these, but if you hover over any of these, they'll give you a little bit of a definition and an explanation what these are. But just briefly, media class is either roadside, place-based, which is in venue, or fleet, which is still to be coming a little bit more in the future. Structure type has to do with the actual property of the structure itself that the frame is on. So, a bill or bulletin on the side of the highway is a freestanding structure because it is its own structure. That's the reason for it to exist. But something like a bus shelter or a bench, for example, the frame is attached to something else. So the structure type is furniture in that case. And all of these are just different ways that you can go about the same problem. So, media type, this is about the actual size of the panel, I believe. Let me just hover. Yeah, this is based on the size of the frame itself. You can see there's about a bunch of different options here. Some of the more colloquial and more familiar feeling names might be bundled into the operator media names here. And so you can search through these as well because there are a lot of them. But again, this is all just kind of different ways to approach the same thing, which is just to filter down more specifically. You can go by material, so either digital or printed or both. And then place type and placement type refer to the place-based media, so anything in venue, which I'm not going to touch upon today. But if you want to filter based on place based, you can do that here. So that's all sort of about the actual qualities of the frame itself and the structures themselves. But then we have things like, orientation, which way do they face, spot dimensions, how big are they. You can filter based on minimum or maximum feet. You can also do the illumination hours. So say you only wanted things that were illuminated during daytime hours, you could do that. Rotating is just anything that has a display that moves. So trivision boards, digital boards, anything where the display is not a static image would be rotating. And then you can also filter by audit status, and that's just kind of our internal audit status here. So there's a lot that you can do in those. You won't need most of those options in most cases. But beyond that, we have things like operator. So you can search by whatever operator is, in whatever market you're looking in. So this will reflect whatever market you have filtered. It'll auto update to only show operators in that market. So you can use those. You can also use location filters. And you can get a bit more specific here than we could with the define market in the first tab that I was looking at. And here we can get down to zip codes if we wanted. And then, of course, if you have a list of Geopath IDs or operator IDs that you want to filter for some specific units, you can just drop those right in here, either from an Excel sheet or from an email or something like that, and it'll parse it out for you, and it'll actually validate if it has matched whatever you entered. So specific IDs, you can filter by those, but also within this bucket here is load saved inventory sets. Excuse me. And when you filter your inventory down to a certain number of units, say I had been doing my example and I got down to like 30 units that I wanted to save for later, I can save those as an inventory set, so I can come back to that. And you can then access your past inventory sets here and just call one of those up and say it's like a perm that you work on a lot, or it's a package that you're kind of shopping around with a couple different audiences and you've been doing a lot of work with it. You can just call that up from right within here and not even have to worry about filtering any other way. And then finally, the thresholds filter. You can set some minimum or maximum values for a few different metrics and only look at units that reflect that same metric value. So a long-winded way to say, basically, there are a lot of different ways that you can filter your inventory here. There's no right or wrong way. And I just kind of, as a whole, with the Explore module of the Insight Suite, there are a lot of different pathways you can use to get to the same thing. So you don't have to go to the Define Target tab first. You don't have to do this one second. You don't have to do these in any order necessarily. So it's a very fluid tool, and you can really make it work for you and however you need it to work. And I'll show you in just a second when we start with our example. It'll make a lot more sense in application. But just two more things before we move on. The layers and display options. If you have saved items like a saved inventory set, like I was mentioning, or if you have a place set saved from the places module, which I'll talk about in just a second, you can basically add layers onto a blank map, and create a custom map. So I can add all of my different elements that I've been working on. I can color code them. I can rearrange them. And then if I come over to the Actions tab, I can go to like Print View, and then I can print to a PDF from here, or I could save my view and come back later. And this is a lot of sort of actions for the whole tool itself, for the whole map itself. And also within this layers and display options, aside from these layers that you can add to your map, we have this display options tab where we can uncheck or check certain things about the map experience and user interface itself. We can also change the base maps here. So there's a lot of things that you can do. Again, not everything that you will need in any given, in everyday scenarios, but there's a lot of different things that you can use here. But again, before I jump into my scenario, I'm going to just jump really quick to the places module, since I'm not going to actually use it in my example. I just want to show everyone just to get this on everyone's radar as well. So visually fairly similar to the Explore module. It's got tabs up top just like before, just like the other module, I mean. And the way that the Places module works is at first you do a national level search. So say I wanted to search McDonald's, just, a big chain that I know will return a lot of results. So about almost 14,000 places returned. It's a lot to even just parse through here. So what you can do now is after you've done your initial search, there are a lot of different tools in here that you can use to get more specific. So location tools, we could search for a market. So say I wanted to just see New York, see what comes up. New York City, New York County, New York State, New York City. Let's do New York City just to see. So you could do by market. You could also draw a polygon or a radius here. And these are just some location filters, but in addition to that, you could also do by place type. And these are more industries. So place types, industry type, or brands specifically. So McDonald's or other. But let me just do New York so we can actually see when we're looking at a more specific. Okay, so you can see there's a little bit of a yellow outline over the New York City area. And if we zoom in, we can now see the breakdown of all of the McDonald's that returned in our search here. So let me get a little closer. And I think it's still grouping them, but. So basically what you do when you get to a certain, you've done your filtering and you can do all that. Now I have a group of places that I want to save. And you can go back to the search tab here and just hit this little floppy disk save icon here and then save as a place set. And then you can use this on a map in conjunction with your inventory and see what's nearby. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this. And the reason I'm not touching too much upon this, there's a lot more features that will be added to this in the future. And I just don't need it for my example today, but I wanted to make sure that everyone got a chance to at least see it. Yeah, so that's a little quick touch on the Places module. So I'm going to head back to the Explore module now and actually just start a scenario as if I were going in and doing this on my own. So I always like to start with market first. So that's where we'll start today. The example I'm going to be doing today, I'm actually going to combine a couple counties to make a bit of a custom market. So I'm going to go to the Define Target tab and then Assign Market. I'll switch over to County. And this is just a little tip. If you're in the counties and you want to look at only the counties from a certain state, if you type the state abbreviation and then a comma, it should filter for just the counties in that state. So for this one, I want to use Cook County, which is where Chicago is, I believe. Cook County. Also wanted to use DuPage County, and I think the third one was Will County down at the bottom somewhere. Let me find that. Will County. Okay. So I've got Cook County, Illinois, DuPage County, Illinois, and Will County, Illinois. And you can see here now that I've got my 3 selected, I have 2 options down at the bottom. I could add these as 3 individual markets where I could switch between them and evaluate them separately. Or I could add them as a group, which is what I want to do here. So I'll say add as group. And this is a thing this is an alert that will pop up when you're using certain combinations and when you're applying markets and things like this. And basically all this is saying is, do you want to filter your inventory to the same filter as your audience? And basically the reason for this is because, let me close that for a second. This assign market feature actually works twofold. So what this does is it will geographically filter your inventory. So the prompt it just gave me, but what it also does is it sets your audience base for your metrics. So in this instance, my audience, my in-market audience is going to be anyone who lives in Cook County, DuPage County, or Will County, and Will County, any of those. Mm-hmm. And so what this tool is doing is it's setting my audience base as only the people that live in those counties. And now when I hit add as group, and then I get that prompt again, it's going to say, do you want to filter your inventory to those same 3 counties? Which I do, but hold on.
And just to jump in, Brian,
yeah.
One kind of extreme use case that I often use for this is like, maybe from those 3 counties, you want to see what inventory, how many impressions, from in Times Square, how many impressions are generated from audience from those 3 counties. Because again, think about places that have a lot of tourists and a lot of people from different parts of the country, and you may want to try to reach that audience in a different location as well. So that's one way to think about it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. You know, just as you are um,
Hold on.
kind of setting up your scenario, I just wanted to also say somebody asked a question about, and it goes up back to the audiences, and this was more of a best practices kind of thing, or do we have any tips and tricks on, you know, there's so many different audiences, and, you know, oftentimes you're maybe trying to find one and you don't know exactly how it's worded. Were there any kind of keywords or good keyword searches that you could use to find different audiences? And I think the way I've used it and try to do it is like, again, I think at some level we don't know what we don't know because there are 8,000 different audiences in there. So I just really try to start to think about the category I'm in and just try to use different words. I know this isn't the best answer because there's no one solution, but you know, I try to think of the different category that we're in and try to, you know, use different words that are close to that to see which audiences pop up. And that's the way I've typically done that. But there's also the list of all the audiences, which we can do before the end of the group, is that support.geopath.io. If you click on audiences, there's a box there that you see audiences. That'll give a list of all the audiences we have. So sometimes it's maybe easier just to scroll through that list, or even, you know, like I said, you can also do the kind of try to just use different, what you think may be keywords as well. So sorry, just wanted to jump in on that. And there are a couple more questions I do notice, but I'm going to I'll add them as we go along, kind of in the appropriate place now as you're working through your scenario.
Okay, sounds good. So yeah, you can see here we've got our market. Down here you can see Cook County, DuPage County, and Will County. And so again, as before, we were seeing little teal dots all over the map. Now that we've got a market selected, it kind of groups them together in this bubble. But let's zoom in and get a little bit closer so you can get a sense of what the tool looks like for anybody who hasn't seen this before. What the tool looks like when you get down to like a market level. So Chicago is a very dense market with inventory, as you can see here. There's a lot of different colors here on the map. Let me just open up this key so everyone can see what this is. So bulletins here, orange, posters are yellow, street furniture, so transit shelters or benches are all these green ones. Walls and murals would be anything painted on an outside wall, I guess. And then play space is anything in venue, so all these blue ones. And this will change as we keep filtering. So far I've only set up my audience. I've only set up my market, but let me set up my audience now. So for this one, I want to actually, like was being asked earlier, I want to combine a couple of the demographics and put them together. So I'll start with 18 plus, because by default, just as a reminder, it's always person 0 plus is our total audience in the system. So just so everybody knows. So I've got my 18 plus selected. And again, I can see the options up here of what I can combine with it. So for this one, I want to do this one, 50,000 to just under 75,000 household income. So this is my combination. I'm going to save this or apply this audience. And now as I do that, actually, you'll see these metric over here on the right are going to reflect a lot of different things. So I'm going to just talk about these really quick. So total impressions is total person 0 plus impressions. Total in-market impressions is all of the person's 0 plus impressions coming from, in this case, within these 3 counties. You can see there's about 400,000 impressions coming from outside of these counties in a given week, just based on these numbers here, the difference between these two. And then now that we have our audience set, which again is 18 plus, and then household income 50,000 to 75,000, you can see our target in market is a lot smaller because we're looking at a subset of the total. So we've got about 400 million weekly impressions on all of this inventory in the market here against this audience. And again, as I keep filtering, these are going to change a lot more. So it's always interesting to keep an eye on. Okay, so we've got our audience set. Let's pick some inventory. Let's get more specific with the inventory. Here, I'm not even looking at operators. I'm going to look at anyone who has inventory in the market. I'm really just caring about media type in this instance. So I'm going to go to operator media name. And then I will select, I'm going to do transit shelters, and I'm also going to do posters for this one and just take a look. So let's hit apply. So what this should do now is this should deselect everything in the market, or in this custom market that I made, that is not these two different inventory types. You can see, looks like it did that, but this is still a ton of inventory. And so you might find yourself, you know, when I get to a point like this, where do I go next? If I'm just kind of trying to explore a market or get a good sense of things, you know, where do I go after this? One of the things that's always interesting to take a look at is over in this right-hand menu here, just above these cards is these 3 drop-downs right here. So in this sort by dropdown, we have a lot of different metrics that we can actually use to rank all of the inventory in our filter. So by default, it ranks on target composition percentage, which is essentially, or we like to explain it as the units most efficient at reaching whatever your audience is. So we could go based on that one, but one I don't usually do a lot, and I always think is interesting, I want to go target frequency. So frequency would be the number of times an individual person is reached. So I'm going to look at the transit shelters and posters in this market that reach people the most amount of times. That's just kind of how I'm approaching this one in my head. So now that I've got it filtered that way, if I come to the select dropdown right next to that, I can actually select some of the top ones for this metric and then go from there and either add some more or remove some. But let's take a look at the top 100 here. Okay, so you can see much different spread here. So we've got, here, you know what? I'm going to come up to my layers and display options, and then display options. I'm going to turn off unselected units, apply view. So this should just clean up the map a little bit. Okay, so you can see we've got kind of an interesting spread, a little bit centralized around Chicago, understandably, but a little bit north. And then we've got some that come down, you know, outside of the main metro hub here. But so let's say this is all I wanted to do. I just wanted this group of 100 units, and I want to, you know, save these, and I'll come back to this. So what you can do now, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, if you have a set of units you're happy with or ones that you're going to come back to, you can save these as an inventory set. So if you go save as on the right hand side, I have some options here. Save as a new inventory set. I could add it to an existing one. You can also download as CSV. Say you wanted to just download a report of the metrics and the impressions and everything just on these units right here. This is all you wanted. You could just hit download CSV, and then you would have that right there. I'm going to say this is a new inventory set. We'll call this 3 counties, and then okay. So Illinois, 3 counties, transit shelters, and posters. So save and keep exploring. And so now that this is saved as an inventory set for me, I can use this in the workspace module. I can call this up easily here in the Explore module. I can combine it with other ones. I can run things on it pretty easily. So there's a lot that you can do once you actually save something as an inventory set. And we'll come back to that when we continue into the workspace module. But a couple more things before I jump over that way. So let me just click on, let's click on this one. So for any unit in the system, you know, you can look at them at this level. You know, let me zoom in a little bit closer so you can see a little bit more, because I forgot to mention this actually. When you get to a certain zoom level, the icons change from just dots to start to show directionality and also number of facings. So you can see this one's got 2 faces, looks like north and south. This one's also got 2, but looks like east and west. So it's just something that you can see when you get a little bit closer. So I'm going to select this one here. And again, this exists for every unit in the system. If you click on it, you get sort of an overview card here that pops up. But if you click here for more details, you get this inventory detail sheet on the back, which gives you the highest indexing Prism Premier segments for this particular board. So if that's something you wanted to start with, you just kind of wanted to use that as an audience to start, you could do that. So segment 61 looks like by far the highest indexing. But then you also get a little bit of a sense of just kind of a whole overview of the inventory itself. So one of my favorite features, and one that I want to talk about just really quickly, is top contributing zip code and top contributing DMA. these actually show the actual audience footprints of this board in a given week. And so once this opens up, we can start to see, here we go. Even at a national level, there's a good reach on this, but let me get a little bit closer. Hold on. And when we get to a certain level, when we get down to like close enough that we can see the zip code denominations, you'll see what I mean. So just referring back over to this, we can see that about 56, almost 57% of impressions are coming from one zip code for this board. And then it looks like 6 and below for everything else. I'm just curious what that looks like once we get in here. Interesting. So in this case, it looks like the board falls in its top zip code for impressions. In a lot of instances, that's not the case. A lot of times we'll see, the board will be, zoomed in too far. That's okay. A lot of times we'll see the board will be next to the zip code where its highest impressions come from. It's just an interesting thing to see. Let me see if I can zoom over now. It's somewhere up here. There it is. It's up here. Yeah, so you can see this is the outline of the zip code where it gets most of its impressions. And you can see, but even right here, just barely another zip code away, it falls, 0.71% of impressions come from here. So it's just interesting what a small difference, one or two zip codes could make.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Just as you're doing that, somebody had a really interesting observation as well that I wanted to point out too. Just where you are now in that screenshot, the top contributing DMAs, they're saying, it's interesting to see LA and Dallas at least to have some percent there as well, saying that, that this, hypothesizing that this must be kind of near Midway Airport, a Midway Airport line. And I think that's really interesting, and why I feel like all this data really helps tell better stories, and that's
absolutely
the whole point of it. And I think, right, it shows the personality of a unit, even things like that, where you're just mapping the zip codes really helps you give a sense of where it's drawing the audience from. And also too, up to the upper left-hand corner, the opportunity overview, and I know right now it's just showing prism segments, but even as that expands and you see other segments that it over indexes for, that helps, us tell the story, or helps the industry tell the unique story of these units, and even, I know the hourly impression data is there as well. And that also helps you understand and be more consultative over things. Like this one even has a really interesting peak, at the end of the day, maybe this is one you might advertise the Big Mac on versus the Egg McMuffin, because
sure.
So it really helps provide that information. So I think that was a really great observation, and I just wanted to point that out. There were also a couple other questions that I wanted to let everybody know about, because I do think there's some questions we get every once in a while. One question about, are there going to be label definitions to explain the column labels? And yes, there definitely will be. We do get that question a lot, especially like for the CSV exports. So I've been working internally with a couple of members on my team, trying to put that together and get that into the Insight Suite, because I know there's often some questions about that. So yes, we're working on that, and you should start to see that fairly soon as well. And then another question, and again, so the question is, when you look at the top 25, 50, 100 units, is there a way, if you base it on digital formats, is there a way to avoid having the same unit show up at the different spots? So right now, if you look at the top 25 and you're looking at digital units, there's a potential you might not see 25 dots because one of those dots could represent 8 of the 25 or 6 of the 25. Sure. So that is something we do know about. And yes, we are trying to work on that. That's something, a point I wanted to make sure we have. I wanted to bring it up because we do get asked about this, and something we experience as well. And I do want to assure you that we're working with our developers on that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
For that.
Yeah, and those are all great questions. Yeah, keep asking those if you have any. I'm gonna try to not power through, but I want to make sure I get through most of this if anybody has to jump off in the next few minutes. So let me head over to the workspace module. I'm going to take a pause on this example for just a few minutes. We'll come back to this in a few, but I just wanted to, take a sort of sidetrack for a second and come to the workspace module so we can do a market plan. So now I'm looking at the workspace module. This is what you see when you first open up the module. You can see these are all my past projects. Each one of these white boxes here is a project. And within these projects, I have different scenarios. And the way that a scenario works is it's like, for example, let me open up this one. This Caribou Coffee project, could be for one client or one brand. And then different scenarios within that could be a fall campaign and a winter campaign. Or you could, a project could be, Toyota, and each scenario could be a couple different ideas for the actual campaign you wanted to run on it. There's a lot of freedom in how you use the projects and scenarios. That's kind of what I'm trying to highlight here. So as I mentioned briefly at the beginning, our O-plan functionality from our legacy system now lives in this market plan here. And our ADS functionality now lives in inventory plan. I'll wrap up the scenario I was doing just a second ago, the example we were doing in the Explore module. I'll wrap that up with an inventory plan here. But I'm going to do market plan first, just to show you how that works. Let's make a new project really quick. So we'll call this March webinar. And you can add a description if you want. So we're looking at just a blank project here. I can make a scenario a couple different ways when I have a blank project. I can either hit add scenario, or I can just hit add market plan or add inventory plan. I'll hit add market plan, and we'll just call this one Chicago. Okay. And I'm gonna, like I said, I'm going to sort of take a brief departure from the example I was doing, and then we'll come back to that. But so here in this market plan, basically the function of this plan is, or the function of this part of the tool is, if you are trying to look at a market and look at some media types in that market, this will basically tell you how many units you'll need to reach a certain goal. So whether that's a TRP goal, a reach percentage goal, or an impression goal, you can enter your goal here and then enter all the different aspects of whatever campaign you're working on, and then see how many units you'll need to roughly get that goal. And then from there, you can go and explore, find some units, and then run an inventory plan on it on the back end. But again, I'll show you how to do that. So for this market plan, I'm going to do roughly about what I was doing in the Explore module, but I'm going to do just the whole Chicago DMA. So let's look at just Chicago DMA. My audience for this one, I'll do the same audience that I was doing earlier. I think I saved it to my saved audiences. Yeah, 18 plus, household income 50 to almost 75. So add that. Okay. So we've got Chicago, we've got my audience. I'm gonna leave all operators here because I want to see just anyone who's got inventory in the market. And I wanna look at just posters for this one. Just out of curiosity, I just want to keep it simple so everyone can get a sense of how this will work. So basically the way you fill this in, just as I did, you can start at the top left and go across and then down. You don't need to touch the threshold filter. You really don't need to touch most of these. You can generate a plan with a lot of this missing. So the only thing that's really required, I think, is the plan goal. So for this instance, let's just say I wanted a TRP goal of 25. I'm going to leave my weeks as 1, effective reach as 1. Let me generate plans. So basically, while this is calculating, what this is going to do is it's going to tell me how many posters I'll need in the Chicago market to get my TRP goal of 25 against this audience. Let me open it up so we can take a look. Looks like I'll need about 33 posters in the market here to get my TRP goal of 25. But say I wanted to I wanted to change this and make it 50. I'll probably update to something about 60 something. But you can basically go in and work back and forth with this and try to figure out, okay, so if I wanted 50 TRPs, it'd be about 64 posters. If I open up this operator dropdown over here, it'll show me the operators who have posters in this market. And this is just a really basic market plan. You can do a lot more complicated things with this, as I'll do tomorrow for sure. A lot of tomorrow will be spent in the market plan. So don't worry about if you're missing anything like that. So this is just kind of a brief, quick look at a market plan. But let's rejoin with our inventory, or sorry, with our scenario from earlier. And I'll make a new inventory plan around that one. So we'll call this 3 counties. Okay.
Just as you're typing,
Yeah.
you don't have to stop. You can keep going. There was a question about helping define what TRP is. So TRP is a target rating point. So it's essentially target impressions over the selected target population times 100. And that allows you to have, to understand the media weight. And so it allows you to compare markets. So if you want a 50 TRP in New York and Chicago and LA, so it allows you to know that you'll have the same media weight across those markets, but it may result in different numbers of units that you would need to have in your plan. There's a lot of information on this in our Geek Out library, as well as our Learning Lab. And I know we're starting to get tight on time. We're almost at the top of the hour. So if there are other questions and we didn't get to them, we have them and we'll try to respond to you directly as well.
Yeah, and again, if there's anything anybody feels like they're missing out, if they have to leave early, or if there's something they want to learn more about, again, the session tomorrow will have a lot more in-depth look at a lot of this stuff, and also both of these sessions will be up on our YouTube channel. So if you missed anything, you can see those later. But so an inventory plan is basically if you have a set of inventory. Like I had earlier, I had that I saved an inventory set that I wanted to use, or say you have an Excel sheet of units that you want to use for the campaign or something like that. An inventory plan is where you can actually go and just run some numbers based on those units and whatever you set up here at the top. So for my audience, I'm going to set the same thing as I have for the scenario outside, which was 18 plus, household income 50 to almost 75,000. My market, I'm going to add the three different counties that I had earlier. So Cook, it was Cook, DePage, and Will. Okay, I'm going to add those as a group again. And as Scott mentioned here, I won't do this in this example. I'm going to do it a different way. But one of the newer features, and it's a really big deal, this is something people have been really excited about, is the ability to go beyond these week denominations here and actually go with specific start and end dates. So you can I guess you can go all the way up to 2039 if you wanted. But so you can access that just by using this little switch here, this spot schedule switch. I'm not going to set that right now because I'm going to actually upload from a CSV, and I'll show how that works. But so I've got my audience set, I've got my markets, those combined counties. This delivery goal section here is if you have notes that you want to keep for yourself, you can just write them down here. So this one, I wanted maybe a TRP goal of 25 or something, and maybe reach percentage of also 25. Whatever you type here doesn't affect anything else. It's just for your own notes. So I'm going to come down to upload CSV. Let me just show everyone the actual file itself. I have it open over here. Hold on. There we go. So I've got spot IDs, start date and end date for these. That's all you need, really. It's just those 3 columns that you need. And they don't need to be in that format necessarily. You can download the CSV template for this, and it'll give you just those 3 columns, and you can paste things in there. But if your Excel sheet has, or if your CSV has Geopath spot IDs and a start and an end date anywhere in it, in any of the columns, you can just map those out. So let me just drag the file of this over into the box here. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to drag this over and hit upload. And I think it'll prompt you to match the different headers here. So because I downloaded the template for this, they match right up. But again, if you have an Excel sheet or a CSV that has spot IDs and a start and an end date, you don't even need the template. So I'll hit submit. File successfully uploaded. Okay. And then I think it wants me to just, I think I should still have my counties here. I think it's just double checking, but let me just see. Yeah, okay, it's got them all. So I'm just gonna hit add, yes. Okay, so now you can see it's got my dates added up here. It kind of retroactively adds them up to the top. And once this loads, here we go, we can see I've got 100 spots total. It looks like it's still calculating all of these full metrics here. Here we go. So for these 100 units, it looks like I would get about 70 TRPs, about an 11% reach. And what you can do then is say you're over your TRP goal, like I am in this sense. If I wanted to, I could then go and deselect units and say I only want these 20, and you could save as a new inventory set from there. You can recalculate your units from there. So there's a lot of things that you can do once you actually get to this point. Oops, I'll let this catch back up to me. Another thing I want to mention, this customize columns button. These are all available columns that you can have. There's a lot of them in this list over here that you can add to your reports. So even if you wanted to, you could just click, add everything. I think I just added like 5 or 6 of them. Apply changes, and those will add them to your report. So whatever you have in your columns here is what will export. So if it's not shown here, you won't have it as an exported column. So just add whatever you want exported here. You can see we've got totals here at the bottom for the entire plan. And as Scott mentioned, you can now, say I wanted to change this one, for example. I wanted this one to start the following week instead. I could do that. I could say this one and then I guess that. Yeah, and save. So I could change the start and end dates for an individual unit if I wanted. And really get in there and really fine tune how the plan for all this works. And this is going to keep expanding. I think actually we have a couple more things to show for one of the upcoming updates, but yeah, this whole workspace module is going to get a fairly hefty change fairly soon. So this ability to do start and end dates and really precise planning is going to keep expanding very soon. I think that was all. Scott, do you want to hop back into the?
Great. Yeah. Why don't I? We just the last few closing housekeeping things. I wanted to make sure we go through. Want to hop back to the deck. Sorry. I just want to grab the screen again. Okay, just again, I know, apologies, we were running over time a little bit. Thank you for some of you still staying on. There was a lot of great questions today, so I do appreciate all of the interaction. I know there's a couple that we didn't get to just yet, so we'll reach out to each of you directly if we didn't get to your questions just yet. But just want to let everybody know, as Brian just indicated, that Workspace is going to go through a bit of a change over the coming weeks, and some of the key things are really around ease of use for our members and the whole workflow. So you're going to have the ability to actually click a button, so add scenario, and that will allow you to actually set your plan period, your market, your audience, your operators, and your media types, all for the same project. So it'll be at a project level instead of having to set it for the market plan and then doing that same thing again for the inventory plan. So that'll create a lot more ease of use. And you also will be able to customize the layout to some extent, so you'll be able to shift and move things around within this section as well. So it will be a little bit more customizable. And then again, as always, you'll be able to easily switch in between each of the types of audiences as well. And the metric goals, audiences, et cetera, can now be shared, like I said, simultaneously across the line. So I think that's going to be a lot of ease of use. That's one of the biggest things. There's going to be a lot of other changes. So again, we will focus on that, on those changes as they come out, and really do another deep dive into the workspace, because we do realize it is changing fairly significantly over time. And again, hopefully getting more easy to use and to be more valuable to all of our members. So I do want to, we do want to acknowledge that. What I wanted to, and again, I know we've plugged this a couple times, so we can talk more about this tomorrow on the advanced level session. So again, that's, as I said earlier in the session, that's where we're going to dig in. Brian's mentioned it a couple times. We'll dig in more deeply into the workflows and how to move your current workflow, if you're still working in ADS or O-Plan, into the Insight Suite. And then we'll also talk about, as we're going through, we'll be able to give you a sense of like what is going to be changing and what's coming as well. Usually at this point of the session, we talk about the April sessions as well, the coming month sessions. Typically, when we're in the month of the conference, we usually don't do sessions because we are doing training sessions and those types of things at the conference. But obviously, if you've seen the newsletter that went out, we are not going to have the conference in Phoenix anymore, given the coronavirus outbreak. And so we are right now trying to figure out what that really looks like for us, and what are other options for us, and potentially doing something like a virtual conference or doing virtual sessions. So we will reach back out in our newsletter and talk more about what the April training sessions look like at this point. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. That's why we're still TBD on that, still trying to figure that out. Again, as always, and as Brian mentioned too, you can always come here to our website and go to the Geek Out tab and scroll down. This session, along with a number of our other ones, will be up, very soon. And then you can also click here, right here where it says click here, and that'll bring you to our YouTube channel that has all of our sessions that we've done to date, and you can review any of those that you like. I also do, I've seen there's been a lot of engagement with the Learning Lab, but I do want to let everybody know, if you want more in-depth training or want to go through some stuff on your own, you can click here on the Learning Lab, and there's a whole training curriculum that you can go through. It goes into things like some of the questions that we had: what's a TRP, what's a GRP, what's an impression, how do you calculate certain things, and then it even goes into how to use the Insight Suite, and then how do you tie it all together. So there's 3 certificates you can earn. It takes a total of about 4 hours to go through all of the training. And so we do encourage our members to do that if you do have time over the next few weeks. Again, as always, if you do have any questions, if you didn't get to ask a question and you think of something after the session, please reach out to us, as always, on geekout@geopath.org. And again, thank you everybody for joining these sessions, and we hope you found it valuable. And if you can, please try to join tomorrow's session as well. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, AJ. Just want to say again, thanks to everybody, and we'll hopefully talk to you tomorrow. Great.
Everyone.